Aparoksh Anubhuti, intimate experience of the reality. How intimate? You do it yourself. That's how intimate. Not your wife, not your friend, not your brother.
I thought intimate means you have to do with your wife.
Can't get more intimate than yourself. That's the self-realization. That's the only way to be there, is the experience. No one else.
There's no agent.
No agent.
No agent.
It's just you and you only. You know, and this is the only way to do it. You know, I was reading beautiful spiritual primer Deepak gave it to me. He says there are no temples here, there are no rules here, there are no regulations, no donations, no money, nothing involved. You know, there are no dogmas, there are no set of principles, no group meditations. This is just you and you only. Total voluntary. You want to do it, you follow the path, and you reach the goal. Simple as that. Because this path was given to us by evolution, by God. The path of meditation was laid out by the consciousness. This is the first time in the history of evolution consciousness has given this path, and that's available only to the human beings, as we know, to reach to that path. This path had no names, no forms, no nothing. You had to explore yourself. Our rishis did that for our benefit, and it's available to all of us. Every single person in the world can have it. And this was way before all the religions were started. There was no Jainism, there was no Muslim, there was no Hinduism, there was no Christianity. But this path is laid by the consciousness itself. And it's there, it's built into us. We just have to explore. So, coming out of the duality we talked about is, when you deal with the duality, you're dealing with finite objects. And when the objects are finite, the pleasure that you derive from that is also finite. So it's going to have its own moments, it's going to have its own time limit that you will have it for, and it will have its expiration date also. It also all comes with it. You know, just like any other finite object, it has to follow the same rules: birth, growth, decay, and death. So the pleasure that you derive from the finite objects also going to have a birth, growth, decay, and death. So if you keep chasing the finite objects, you're going to have a finite pleasure. If you want to reach infinite, then you have to reach the infinite object, if whatever you call an object or whatever you call that is a consciousness. So once you reach the zone of consciousness, you have permanent pleasure. Then it's infinite, because it's an infinite object, kind of, right? So the duality is going to give you the pleasure, which is going to be dependent on the conditions. Certain conditions have to be met, certain situation has to be met, then you're going to have pleasure. I was always talking about the father had a big go down, a warehouse, right? Somebody comes and tells him, Dad, the warehouse got a fire. Oh my God, I had 800,000 rupees of material in that, this and that and all that. No, but the one son comes in, he says, no, I just made a deal yesterday. We sold it. Oh, then it's okay. Then it's no problem. But the third son comes, the second son comes, he says, no, we made the contract, but we didn't receive the check. Oh my God, now we have a problem again. And the third son comes, he says, no, he promised, but the man is a very nice man, you know, he's a man of words, and he said he's gonna do it, so he will do it. Oh, then it's okay. So it just go back and forth. Waxing and waning is gonna be part of the duality, because these pleasures are always limited. So as we realize that, you know, and then everything is situational. Even the directions that we consider so firmly, north for me, maybe south for you. So it's everybody is in a relative term, right? So pleasure for me could be a disaster for you, but it goes back and forth. So to receive that, to reach that infinite zone, we have to make an atom, right? And we have to start seeing, like that's why the Shankaracharya laid down the several discussions we went through, and with the arguments we made it prove to us that everything that we look around is consciousness. The only time we're going to have a pleasure continuously is when we see consciousness continuously. Because whatever we see in front of us, since it is temporary, the pleasure that we derive from the
It's temporary.
also material form is also temporary. So and yet you cannot walk away from the society. You have to function in the society. The only way to receive a permanent pleasure by being in the middle of the duality is to see a permanent factor everywhere. And that's why we said there is a beauty. There is a beauty out there. Everything, everybody, every object, every situation is an expression of consciousness. By arguments, we proved that consciousness is everything. It's like sugar crystals. You take the sugar water out of the sugar crystal, crystal disappears. The same way, if you take the consciousness out of this universe, universe disappears. So this universe is consciousness, right? So if we remember that all the time, then we see consciousness everywhere. But it's not going to happen if our mind is mesmerized by the play of duality. See, it's like, are you this spiritual entity having a human experience, or you are a human being trying to become spiritual?
Nice.
It's a very subtle difference.
Yeah. Nice.
So, if you consider yourself a spiritual entity having just a human experience temporarily, then you're coming from a different zone by itself. And then you're seeing consciousness everywhere.
You don't need to meditate then.
Then it's a continuous meditation.
You don't need to meditate then.
That's why I say, Shreyo hi gnanat, right? We did that slok. Shreyo hi
But
gnanat.
not knowing is important. Being in that state is important.
Of course, yeah.
It's not just
But
knowing
Yeah, knowing alone is not enough. Shreyo hi gnanat abhyasat. Instead of regular rituals, gnanat means knowledge.
Knowledge is important.
Of why you're doing this is important.
Yeah.
But at the same time, compared to knowledge, meditation is dhyanat is more important than gnanat. Just knowing is not important. Meditation is where you actually, it's a practical experience of your knowledge. Meditation is important. But more than meditation, karma phal tyagas. Karma phal tyagas means you give up the
Fruit of action.
Fruits of the action, right? So you keep on doing your duties without worrying about the results. And then you're so much involved in your day-to-day activity of doing your duties and everything that you don't worry about the results, leave the results. So your ego is gone. So you're functioning, actually you are not functioning. Consciousness is functioning through you. And that's, karma phal tyaga is better than meditation. Then it's a 24/7 meditation. You're meditating all the time. Because what do you do in the meditation? You're dead to the world, right? You're not choosing any objects, any thoughts. You let the thoughts pass, everything. So you're becoming an observer. Now you're becoming an observer with open eye. You're doing everything, but you're not really doing anything. So it's unaction rather than inaction. So when you're doing an action, that's rajas, at the rajas level, you're performing an action and you want the results. That everybody does. So from this point onwards, whether you want to degrade yourself to not do anything, that's tamas, or you want to do it something, but not for your own benefit, tapas. So you transcend yourself above the rajas level. So then at that point, your ego disappears, but the consciousness is still within you. Consciousness is everywhere. Everybody is consciousness. The consciousness is functioning. So all your actions are going to be driven by the consciousness. So consciousness takes charge of your life, basically. And you let it happen. And that's how the consciousness is going to perform, and you're going to go higher and higher. So karma phal tyaga, 24/7, that's meditation by itself. So the question is whether we want to, because we're going to meet consciousness. Every time I talk to people, objects, situations, everything is consciousness. I'm meeting consciousness. But the question is, do you want to meet a person in a grossified form? It's a solidification of consciousness is all of us. Whether we want to see it in a solidified form or in a spiritual form. It's up to us. So that's why I give the beauty is out there. We have to look for it, right? Say cherry blossom, the beautiful flowers and the springs and everything. That's easy to understand. Those are the expressions. Like the trees don't care. They don't have egos. Flowering shrubs don't have egos. They just come out and express themselves, right? That's where the consciousness is functioning without any obstruction, without any egos. It's only the human beings that we have problems. So those egos come in the way because of our tendencies to hold, acquire, hold on to, steal, cheat, all those things are coming in the way, right? But there are situations. I mean, why just like restrict yourself only to the nature, even the people? And there are people who will be expressing themselves without any egos, right? And you can see that. I mean, the other day we had a beautiful baby came into the, because we're not pediatrician, we don't see babies, right? We go crazy when baby comes and everybody starts playing with the baby, and you know. So we had a beautiful girl who was brought in by a mother who had actually gone through a lot of, she had a pneumonia and everything while pregnant. She had to have a lot of x-rays. We couldn't help it because, I mean, normally x-rays, radiations are not really, you know, advised, you know, during the, but we have to do it. And it was really a tough pregnancy. But finally the baby came out so beautiful. It was such a beautiful baby. So she brings it and she's nicely dressed in pink and she had beautiful blue eyes and she keeps staring at you, everybody and all that. And you know, the thought I had that the consciousness is expressing itself through every single child. And God is saying that here, there is another chance for you to fix this world for this baby. You know, you look at the babies are so innocent. So look for the expressions of consciousness everywhere. And not just babies. I mean, even I had 90-year-old great-great-grandma coming to my office, right? You know, she's totally toothless. She has hardly any teeth, right? And she says, Shrenik bhai, how long do I have to live? I said, another 10 years. She said, why? Well, I said, my goal is to make all my patients 100 years, whether you like it or not. He says, no, but I don't want to. But I said, I want you to. He says, why? Well, I said, my reputation goes back. And she had the biggest smile on her face. And imagine looking at an old grandma without any teeth and smiling and laughing. There is God there. It's such an innocent smile these people had. So we just have to bypass our own requirements. What you want out of that situation, you stop try to gain anything from the situation and you just want to observe. I'm not even saying try to see actively, but it's there. It's there. But when you stop putting your own ego down, what you want out of that situation, you will start seeing consciousness everywhere. So consciousness is everywhere. Every single moment you have a chance to meet consciousness. And we should do that. And that's where that makes the whole life so much enjoyable. I was reading one of the readers' columns, you know, somebody had written to Deepak Chopra. He says that I used to commute in BART trains in San Francisco every day. And every day I hated my job. Every day I would wake up and say, why do I have to wake up so much early and take the train, this and that? And I'm still doing the same routine. But after waking up to spirituality, I look forward to waking up every morning. I look around and the beautiful sun is rising. I just look at the sun, beautiful rays coming out. First person I see, I always say good morning. Whether he or she says good morning in return or not, doesn't matter. And things like that. Spirituality fills your life with joy. And that joy.
I enjoy that too.
Isn't it?
When I come in the morning, I enjoy.
It's so much fun. It's just out there. So consciousness you can meet every day. So it's your choice. Whether you want to see the magic and get mesmerized, or you want to see the magician behind it. So we said, last lecture we talked about, is how the neurons in your brains are designed to see the
moving target.
Moving targets. But the non-moving targets are actually actively suppressed by the another set of neurons. So we are evolutionarily designed to see the moving targets. And what is motion? Whatever we see around is motion. We are made of molecules, atoms, subatomic particles, and they all are moving. We know that in the center of the nucleus, the protons and the neutrons which are sitting there, they are going at 186,000 miles a second as we speak. So the motion is the consciousness with the terrible speed, terrific speed, it has created these particles. And when the speed goes down, the particles disintegrate, go back into the consciousness. So motion is us. We are the motion, right? So every single particle is a motion. Every single solid entity that you see is a motion. So motion. So our neurons were designed to see the motion. So the whole purpose of our existence was to come, and God says, go, look for the fun, and don't forget me. but except that we forgot him. Every single experience is possible because of the consciousness, and yet we have audacity to ask, does God exist? Stupid guy, you exist because of him.
Yeah.
And you have an audacity to ask, does God exist?
Have you
I
seen
don't
it?
think so.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
That's ajnana.
So God had designed, whole evolution has been designed. There was a good take-home message from that show that I got, that this certain set of neurons are in the forefront that are designed to see the moving target. And the another set of neurons actually facilitate by suppressing all the things which are not moving. So when the guy is putting his hand near the pocket and he's moving this hand, the guy is looking at this hand continuously. But meanwhile, this guy is taking the wallet away. Right? So that's how we are designed. And that's what the magicians use, or the trick for us to see. So the question is, are we going to just keep looking at the magic rest of our lives and just waste it? Or are you going to see the magician behind it? We want to see the magician behind it. And that experience must be the intimate experience of the reality. That's what we want to reach. And for that, we have to disregard the motion. And we have to go beyond that and look at a bigger picture, right? So from that, we moved on to the space and time. And we talked about the space, how the space holds on to all these material objects, the galaxies, all the planets and the solar systems, and everything is housed by the space. And once they're destroyed, again they go back to the space and things like that. And then it just gives you an imaginary idea how the consciousness is. Even though we decided, we talked about it, that there is a big difference between space and the consciousness, because space is dead. Versus consciousness is full of energy, Sat, Chit and Anand. All those things are created from the consciousness, because consciousness did not just create this solid universe. It created more than that. It also gave us the awareness, and awareness made us aware of each other. And existence came first, and then the awareness was built into it. We started exploring the awareness, and then we had a joy. So all these joys are built into it. Joy is built into every single molecule, every single atom, even to the tiniest bacteria, to the biggest organisms. Every single action that is done, before the action starts, awareness has to be there. And without awareness, nothing can start. Even if a tiny microorganism is looking for food, it has to be aware of the surrounding, where the food is. Once it recognizes the food, then it consumes the food. So, first of all, the food had existed, microorganism had existed. The microorganism had to have the awareness of the existence of the food, and then the action starts, and then hunger gets satisfied, and that's the joy. So there is a guarantee of any action that you do, the reward is guaranteed. All that could not have been created by the space by itself. Space is dull, space is dead, space is vacuum. So consciousness is like space, but it's a lot more than the space. So, and then the next we talked about was the time. Like we said, the time and the space are the creations of the mind, because without space, the time cannot exist, right? Because the space meaning separations of the object, one object versus the other, the reality. Good morning.
Good morning.
So it's the relativity. Motion of one object versus the other gives us the imagination of time. It's an imagination. It's a creation of our mind. But how would it be to go beyond the time and space? To go to the root level where the time and space were created. 13.5 billion years back, this universe was in a form of a tiny single point from which it exploded, right? To step beyond that and go behind the scene of creation of time and space must be an unusually joyous experience. And that's what we want to reach, right? So, there was an experiment, actually, I read in a Discover magazine. It's in the last issue. And they're trying to really see, there are sets of, it's all at the molecular level, right? It's the quantum level, actually. So they have found out that there are pairs of quantums and, say, protons. There will be particles and antiparticles, and we talked about it, that if one particle goes one way, the antiparticle goes in exactly the opposite way. Now, the beauty is, whether they are close to each other or separated by 2 miles, 20 miles, 200,000 miles, it doesn't matter. If one particle goes up, another particle goes down. It's unwritten rule. Now, which way they're communicating, nobody has any idea. Because the fastest way to communicate in this universe is the light, 186,000 miles a second. But that still is limited. So, something is beyond that. So they conducted this experiment on what they call entangled particles. Good morning.
Good morning.
The entangled particles are, they have the similar motions. So they selected 2 protons, and here the entangled particles do exactly the same what the other particle will do. So they conducted an experiment. It says, all right, so the one proton goes this way, another proton goes that way. So they fired the protons, right, at the end of a long table. At the end of the table, they put a deflector. So one proton can go this way, another proton can go that way. And then each proton was given a choice of taking a shorter route after being deflected or a longer route. They found out that both the protons will take either the short route or the long route. They will never fail. It will never happen that one will take a shorter route, another will take a longer route. Never. And they were separated quite a bit. So theoretically they say, well, it was a short distance, so maybe they have communication, way of communicating that we don't know. So what they did was, they created a sequence of time was different, but they called these radioacoustic waves they threw. It's almost like, because time is a relative thing. Time is like, because they say if you go on a cross-country flight, because Einstein found out that time is a relative thing. If you travel, say, from east to west, your watch will slow down, right? So they say even if you go from New York to LA, your watch will slow down by 0.01777 nanoseconds. Very small enough that you can't even perceive it, but it does happen. The same way if somebody travels from LA to New York, will pick up that much time. So traveling slows down, going westwards, it will slow down your watch and your time. Now, supposing, say, you put 2 people on a jet plane, one going from New York to LA, another one, say, from New York to further east, say Tokyo or whatever. And you tell them to do it at a certain time to start the clock, right? Both of them would have done at the same time, but because of the time difference, because time is a relative thing, so one person would lag behind the other. So what they did was, in this experiment, they tried to fool the protons. So they, through the acoustic waves, at the quantum level, it's a way of slowing down the time, which I don't understand much, but that's how they did it. But still the results came out the same. Even after slowing the time for one versus the other, they had a way of communicating. So it was funny. So they said that there is a way of communication beyond the fabric of time and space.
So what you're trying to tell is even they were apart such a long distance, it still communicated.
They still communicated. And so they said that time, like theoretically, supposing, say, they took their decision to go on a short or small route, or a smaller or the longer route at the same time, apparently according to them. But if they were separated, that means theoretically the communication should have been lagged behind. So by the time one proton decides, the other proton might have already gone or not gone yet, things like that. So the decision should have been affected. But somehow, they still did the same thing, right? So they said that time and space has a limitations. And because of those limitations, the ability to communicate is very limited. So there must be some other ways of communicating beyond the time and space. And that's the field we want to reach. And in that field, the connection is instantaneous. And that instantaneous is a lot faster. Or forget about faster, it's instantaneous. There is not even a question of speed. So when Rishi said that God is everywhere, That's what it means.
is.
If Bill Gates
Consciousness.
That's
If
what
Bill
it
Gates
is.
knows it, he will take a
Exactly.
patent on it and make millions.
So, consciousness is everywhere. Consciousness perceives everything, every single second, every single moment. In fact, the time and space doesn't matter. And all that information is stored at the consciousness level. And so that's it, God is watching you. That's what it means. It's a constant feeding into the consciousness. And consciousness knows everything. Consciousness is very conscious of every single thing happening. And at every level, it has its own presence. Nothing can exist without consciousness. So it was very interesting.